Welcome to Life Stories, where we share powerful and inspiring journeys of resilience, strength, and personal growth. Today's story is one of survival and empowerment, about a young woman who was abandoned by her parents at a train station as a lesson, only to rise above the pain and build a life of her own. But when her parents return, seeking to destroy everything she's worked for, she must face them head-on and reclaim her power. Let's dive into this incredible story. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to start today's story with Life Stories. I was 16 when it happened. I had always felt like the odd one out in my family. Like I was the only one who couldn't seem to fit into their perfect little mold. My parents, Robert and Carol, always had high expectations of me, expectations that felt like a burden I was never meant to carry. I remember the way they looked at me sometimes, like I was a project they hadn't quite finished yet, a test subject for their lessons on life. They were strict, controlling, and distant in their own way. It wasn't that they didn't love me. I think they did, at least in the way they knew how. But love, as I'd come to realize, is not just about providing food, shelter, and discipline. It's about connection, trust, and mutual respect. And in our house, there was very little of that. It was a warm afternoon when it happened, the sun hanging heavy in the sky like a golden weight, pressing down on everything it touched. We were on a road trip to visit my older sister, Rachel, at college. We'd spent the weekend with her, making small talk, pretending that everything was fine, that we were the perfect family. Rachel, ever the dutiful daughter, was everything I wasn't. She smiled through everything, never questioned the rules, and did what was expected. I always felt like I was in her shadow, constantly being compared to her, constantly being told to be more like her. But that day, something changed. I was in the backseat of the car, half asleep, my headphones drowning out the hum of the highway. My parents were up front, arguing about something trivial that I had long since tuned out. I'd learned early on that the only way to survive in our family was to keep my head down and stay out of the crossfire. We were driving through the quiet backroads of Alabama, the road stretching endlessly ahead. The car slowed, and I cracked my eyes open, squinting against the sunlight. We had passed a train station, one that looked like it belonged to another era, old, rusted, and nearly abandoned. The memories of that place still haunt me. I should have known that something was wrong, that my parents had planned something I wasn't prepared for. Without any warning, my father pulled the car into the lot and stopped by a pair of weathered vending machines. "Go grab me a soda," he said, his voice distant, not even bothering to look at me. My mother turned in her seat, her eyes narrowing at me as she smiled, that fake smile that I had come to recognize over the years. "Get your father a drink, honey, and grab me a water." I didn't say anything. I didn't argue. There was no point. It had always been like this with them, distant, controlling, and devoid of any real affection. I pushed open the door, and the heat hit me like a wall. I stepped out onto the cracked pavement and made my way toward the vending machines. The air was thick and heavy with the weight of summer, and the sound of cicadas buzzing in the distance seemed to fill the silence between us. The machines were old, their decals peeling away, barely recognizable from years of sun exposure. I dug a crumpled $5 bill from my pocket and fed it into the machine. It took a moment before the machine groaned and spit out 2 bottles, one lukewarm soda, one bottle of water. I grabbed them both and turned to head back to the car. But the car was gone. For a moment, I stood there in shock, unable to process what I was seeing. Maybe they'd just moved to another spot, I thought. Maybe I had missed them somehow. But as I scanned the empty parking lot, I realized with growing dread that they were gone. My mind refused to accept it. My heart pounded in my chest as I pulled out my phone and tried calling them. But the call went straight to voicemail. I tried again, and again. Each time, the same hollow beep echoed in my ear. They weren't answering. Then, I got the text from my mother. "Let's see how long it takes you to get home. Consider this a lesson in problem solving." My stomach dropped. My mind raced. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an accident. My parents had left me there, on purpose. My hands shook as I stood there in the heat, gripping the soda bottle so tightly that the plastic crinkled in my hand. I should have been devastated, should have been angry, but instead, a strange calm settled over me. I had been here before, in different ways, at different times, but it was always the same. They wanted to teach me something. They wanted to show me that I wasn't important, that I was just another lesson to be learned. I had been locked outside during a storm when I was 13 because I forgot to take out the trash. When I was 14, they made me walk 6 miles home from school in the rain as punishment for missing the bus. They weren't just teaching me life lessons, they were breaking me, piece by piece. And yet, I always came back. I always tried to prove that I was good enough. But not this time. This time, I wasn't going to wait for them to come back. I wasn't going to play their game. I wasn't going to be the daughter they wanted me to be. The daughter who always came crawling back when they pulled away. I was done. I glanced around the station. People were walking by, oblivious to the 16-year-old girl standing there with nothing but a wallet and a growing sense of rage. I wasn't going to wait for them. I wasn't going to be their puppet. I was going to survive. I was going to find my way home on my own terms. With a sense of finality, I checked my pocket, $140. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to get me out of there. Enough to get me away from them. I walked up to the old man behind the ticket counter, trying to keep my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. Where's the nearest bus station? He barely looked up from his paper. Couple miles down the road. I nodded, already turning away. I didn't need them anymore. I didn't need anyone but myself. I was alone, but I was never going back. The years that followed were a blur. I didn't look back. I couldn't afford to. I worked tirelessly, sometimes juggling 3 jobs at once. Always pushing forward, always striving to survive. I had learned the hard way that nothing in life came without sacrifice. And that no one was going to give me anything. I scraped together enough money to move into a tiny, moldy studio apartment, but it was mine, and it was my refuge. There were nights I'd fall asleep on the couch, exhausted beyond belief, with only the hum of the city around me. But it was my life, and I was determined to live it on my terms, far from the toxic grip of my parents. College came and went. It wasn't easy, but I had built something for myself, a future, a sense of purpose. I graduated, though it took longer than most, and eventually landed a job at a development company. Through sweat and tears, I climbed my way up, building a career that I was proud of. One thing my parents had never given me was stability, and I worked hard to create that for myself. For the first time, I could breathe, knowing that no one was waiting for me to fail. And yet, despite all the progress I had made, there was always a part of me that feared they would find me. I tried to push it away, tried to convince myself that they didn't matter anymore. But the past has a way of creeping back, especially when you least expect it. It was a day like any other when it happened. I was sitting in my office, going over some project details when I got the first call. It was an unknown number, and I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. My sister, Rachel's voice, came through the line, strained and shaky. "Sarah, you need to pick up your phone," she said, her voice catching on something. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm. "What's going on?" "They've found you," she said, her words hitting me like a punch in the gut. "Mom and Dad, they've been looking for you." The anger, the confusion, it all surged back. I felt a coldness wash over me as I sat back in my chair. I knew exactly what they wanted. They had never reached out to me out of love. Never because they missed me. They only wanted something from me: money, support, control. The realization hit me like a freight train, and I could feel my heart racing as the flood of memories came rushing back. Rachel continued, "They're desperate, Sarah. They need your help." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "I don't owe them anything, Rachel. Not anymore." I hung up the phone, the weight of the situation settling heavily on my chest. I had worked so hard to get away from them, to build something for myself. And now they wanted to tear it all down. They didn't care about me. They cared about what I could do for them. For a while, I tried to ignore the mounting pressure. I turned off my phone, avoiding the texts and calls that were coming in from both my parents and Rachel. But they wouldn't stop. They didn't care how I felt, they just wanted me to fall in line. They thought that after all these years, I would just forget everything they did to me and help them out of their mess. But I couldn't do that. Not after everything. The guilt they tried to impose on me was suffocating. They knew just how to make me question myself. How to make me feel like I owed them something. But I had already walked away from their control. I had already cut the ties. There was nothing left for me to give. Days passed, and their attempts to manipulate me grew bolder. My phone buzzed with messages and voicemails. But I refused to listen. They thought they could force me to care. Force me to come back into their world. But I knew better. I knew that the moment I allowed them back in, they would take control again. I wasn't going to let that happen. I had made it this far without them. And I wasn't going to let them tear down what I had built. I had learned the hard way that family isn't always what it's cracked up to be. Sometimes, the people who should love you most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. And I wasn't about to let them destroy everything I had fought for. Their calls became more frantic. The messages more desperate. But I remained firm. I wasn't going to be their pawn anymore. I had built my life from the ground up. And I wasn't going to let them tear it down. I had learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do for yourself is to walk away, and never look back. It didn't take long for the situation to escalate. I knew they wouldn't stop at just sending messages or leaving voicemails. My parents, Robert and Carol, were desperate. And desperation breeds recklessness. Their attacks were no longer subtle. And they weren't going to be satisfied until they had dragged me back into their world. No matter the cost. One morning, as I sat at my desk, trying to focus on a project, my assistant, Jenny, stepped into the room with an unreadable expression. "You might want to see this," she said, handing me her phone. Confused, I took the phone, my stomach already sinking as I read the screen. It was a post on Facebook, a long one, filled with accusations that sent a chill down my spine. The post was from my mother, Carol, and it was filled with venom. Our daughter abandoned us in our old age after everything we sacrificed for her. It began, followed by more words designed to paint me as an ungrateful child who had turned her back on the people who had given her life. The post accused me of stealing money from them, of turning my back on my family, of being a heartless, selfish person. The second post was worse. "We raised her to be strong. And this is how she repays us. Heartless." My chest tightened as I scrolled through the comments. There were hundreds of them. Some from people who claimed to know me. Others from strangers who were now condemning me for abandoning my parents. My mind raced. I had seen this before. This pattern of manipulation. But it still hit me like a punch to the gut. They had turned the world against me, trying to rewrite history and make me the villain in a story where I had been nothing but a victim. Jenny watched me silently, her concern evident. "There are more posts," she said, her voice trembling. "It's starting to spread. Some of our clients are calling. They're worried about how this is going to affect your business." The anger inside me flared. This wasn't just a personal attack anymore. It was a full-scale campaign to ruin everything I had worked for. They had already tried to destroy me emotionally. And now they were trying to destroy my livelihood. The realization hit me like a slap in the face. This wasn't about them needing help. This was about control. About them trying to get back into my life. No matter the cost. I could feel the weight of it all pressing down on me. But I wasn't going to let them win. Not this time. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me into submission. I had worked too hard to get here. Too hard to build something that was mine. Something that didn't come with strings attached. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The past had always been there, lurking in the background, but I had fought to move on, to build a future. I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their world, no matter how hard they tried. As the days passed, the social media campaign intensified. The posts became more aggressive, the accusations more pointed. It wasn't just a few angry comments anymore, it was a full-blown smear campaign. I knew they were behind it. Knew they were using every tool at their disposal to break me. But I wasn't going to break. Not this time. In the midst of all this chaos, my phone rang again. It was Rachel. Her voice was shaky, filled with guilt. "Sarah, please. You have to talk to them. They need you." "No, Rachel," I said, my voice calm but firm. "They don't need me. They need control. They've been doing this for years. And I'm not going to let them do it anymore." "I know," Rachel said, her voice cracking. "But they're threatening to take this to court. They're saying you owe them everything." I felt a wave of bitterness flood through me. They had abandoned me at 16. Used me as a pawn in their twisted game of control. And now they wanted to claim that I owed them something? After everything they had done to me. They thought they could take me to court and force me to give them money? "I'm done, Rachel," I said, my voice hardening. "I'm done letting them manipulate me. They can't control me anymore." The lawsuit came a few days later, in the form of an official letter from a lawyer, claiming that I was neglecting my filial responsibilities. I laughed bitterly when I read it. The irony was overwhelming. After all these years, after everything they had done to me, they were using the legal system to try to force me into submission. But this time, I wasn't going to back down. I had spent too long fighting for my freedom to let them take it away from me now. I called my lawyer immediately. The case wasn't strong, but there was still the possibility that it could cause trouble. My lawyer, David, warned me that if the media got a hold of it, it could damage my reputation. But I wasn't going to let them win that easily. The next day, I made a decision. I was going to fight back, publicly. Let the world see who they truly were. Let the world know the truth about my parents and what they had done to me. And if they wanted to go to court, then let's take this all the way. It was time to turn the tables. I wrote my statement, a truthful account of my life with them. And I posted it on every social media platform. The truth was out there now. And I wasn't afraid anymore. Let them come for me. I was ready. As I hit post and shared my story with the world, something inside me shifted. I no longer felt the weight of guilt or fear that had haunted me for years. For the first time in my life, I was telling the truth without hesitation, without shame. The floodgates opened, and within hours, the post had gone viral. People who had once criticized me for abandoning my parents now rallied behind me. The tide of public opinion had turned, and my parents, for the first time, found themselves in the spotlight they had tried so hard to control. I was no longer a victim in their narrative. I was the author of my own story. And that was more powerful than anything they could do. The legal threats, the smear campaign, the attempts to tear me down, they all fell apart. They had underestimated me, thinking I would be broken by their manipulations. But instead, I had found my voice. And with it, my freedom. Days later, my sister, Rachel, reached out again. Her voice was softer this time, filled with regret. "I see what they've done now," she said. "I'm sorry. I didn't need an apology. What I needed was peace. The past was no longer my burden to carry. I had set boundaries, and I was living my life on my terms. They no longer had the power to control me, to pull me back into their toxic web." As I closed the door behind me and stepped into my future, I knew that the hardest part was over. I was free, finally. Truly free. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more life stories that will inspire, empower, and remind you that you are not alone in your journey. Thank you for watching, and choose yourself, always.